Nation in Conversation, proudly brought to you by Senves, Grain SA, Avgreen, John Deere, Engen and Monsanto.
Good morning and welcome to Nation in Conversation. This is the third discussion we will have this morning. It'll be about resources, the scarceness of resources, the risks of resources, and how can we go about finding solutions in terms of the modern day environment. I've got a very distinguished panel this morning, and I'd like to introduce them to you. First of all, to my left is Charles Senekal, owner of Senekal Farms. Charles, welcome. And we look forward to specifically look at the solutions you have and your opinions on the current challenges. Then, next to Charles is Mariam Sikwanya. Mariam is Managing Director of Harvest Time. Mariam, welcome. I think you play a big role in terms of development in your area, specifically in Mpumalanga, and we look forward to your points of view. Next to her is Mike Stead. He's the Commercial Fuels Manager at Engen. Mike, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And we specifically look forward to your inputs on fuels, on biofuels, on renewables, and what the current position is. And then next to him is Dr. Hendrik Smith. He's the Conservation Agriculture Facilitator for Grain SA. Mike, Hendrik, welcome. I would like to start with you, Hendrik. If we look at the current environment, South Africa is a resource-scarce country, both from a land point of view and from a water point of view. And there's also challenges in terms of land, in terms of our arable land, and in terms of water and the quality of water. Can you give us a synopsis of where we are and what the current challenges are in South Africa?
Yes, Theo, I think we all know that we have a country with spectacular beauty, natural landscapes, but we have a scarcity of natural resources of high quality for agriculture. 70% of our natural resources is only suitable for extensive livestock production. We have good models there. We need to make sure that it's sustainable. 13% is arable, 13% of land.
1/3 that is.
Yes, 1/3% of land is suitable for arable production. 3% of that is high potential land for arable production. Of that 3% of high potential land, most of it lies in Mpumalanga, a bit in Gauteng. So let's quickly look at the threats of our land situation. In Mpumalanga itself, there's a huge threat on our high potential soils by open cast coal mining. About 50% of that high potential land is actually threatened by open cast coal mining. We have energy needs, so I don't think that is easily going to stop the threat from open cast coal mines on our high potential lands, especially in Mpumalanga province. Then there's also urban creep. About 10% of that high potential land is also threatened by urban creep, especially in the Gauteng area, but also in areas of Mpumalanga. So that is another one. So let's look at some of the environmental threats that we have on our land resources and especially also water resources. We know about climate change. It's the dark cloud above all of us. We need to make sure that we understand what the consequences are of climate change. We need to try and find solutions. We're going to talk about the solutions. And then secondly, the loss of biodiversity. If you look at the map published by the Department of Environmental Affairs about the state of biodiversity in South Africa, you will see that highly endangered areas in terms of biodiversity is all in the grain production areas of South Africa. So yes, we've transformed our land, makes sense. We produce foods, but we're doing it with a massive cost. But last and not the least is our threat to soil resources. Agriculture is the prime source, of course, of land and soil degradation. There's a soil loss rate of about 13 tons per hectare, only for water erosion, 13 tons per hectare per year. That means that we're losing about 3 tons of soil for every ton of maize we produce. That is only water erosion. We know that there's also severe wind erosion, especially in these parts of the country. We can remember perhaps that last year, October, a huge dust storm started here around Bloemfontein. It swept across the Free State. And it actually also reached the Gauteng, Johannesburg. So we have a severe problem with land and soil degradation. If we don't reverse that situation, we're not going to even think of finding solutions for our food production. Water degradation, of course, is linked to land degradation. It is influenced by soil erosion, of course. It has a lot of other factors influencing it, but our scarce water resources is really a massive problem. Link that up with the land resources, then we really need to think carefully what we are doing to our land resources, land and water resources. We need to find solutions. We need to stop the situation and reverse it in order to produce enough food for our growing population in the future.
I want to pick up, Charles, the point that he made about water. Water is a resource that you cannot farm without. And water can play a tremendous role if utilized correctly in not only developing viable commercial farms, but also assisting communities to better their lives. In your case, can I take you back about 10 years ago? And through the development in terms of water and the benefits, can I take you back a few years?
Theo, thank you. 10 years ago, we had a severe drought in the Zululand area, North Zululand, where I farm. Things were really going bad. We have a large community of about 1 million people living around my farm. And those guys ran out of water completely for themselves and their livestock. I took my excavators, and the Mkuzi River flows through my farm for about 15 kilometers, and I dug water holes in the Mkuzi River. I allowed cattle to come into my farm just to drink, but the people were suffering, and they came with buckies and 20-liter containers in the back, and they used beer cans to fill it up with. And I then bought a few of these Honda engines, and I helped them. My family, all of us are community people, and we just decided to help them. And rains came, and things normalized. And then one day I phoned then Deputy President Zuma, and I said to him, "You're from this part of the world. Do you know what went on here?" He said, "For sure, I know very well." And I said, "Listen, why can't I use water from the Jozini Dam to service the community?" And he said to me, "Charles, it's a brilliant idea. We have it on our planning. It's probably in the pipeline for next year. What's your solution?" And I said, "No, Deputy, give me the opportunity to lay a pipeline from the dam straight through the town to the purification plants." And he said, "But listen, it could cost you as much as 200 million rand. And I said, "Yeah, but don't you worry, I'll do it. I'll pay for it." He said, "But there must be a catch in it." And I said, "And the catch is I want water for my sugarcane lands." The president enjoyed it very much, and he said to me, "Listen, fly down to Cape Town and see me tomorrow." And I was busy packing when the phone rang, and he said, "No, listen, I'm so excited about this. I want to come and have a look. I'm coming to you. You're not coming to me." And the president arrived, and he brought with him Minister Casserols and a few other senior people of water affairs. We sat down, and within less than half an hour, we ironed out a long-term plan for water supply to Mkuzi town. The president was very, very positive, and he said, "Listen, we're going to help you with the EIAs and all that, but I want you to start as soon as possible." And I then bought 1.5 meter diameter pipes, and I went down to the Rand Water Board where they were laying pipelines, and I took my video camera with me, and I studied the people, how they lay pipelines this big. And I spent most of my day there taking pictures and About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I said to my wife, well, I'm ready to move. I'm going to appoint that guy, and that guy. So I called them in, Theo, and they all accepted my offer. And a week later, I started moving their furniture down to the farm. And I gave them all the equipment they wanted. And I said to them, okay, on your marks, get set, go. Start laying this pipeline. And the Deputy President was so kind, he said to me, any obstacle you come across that I can solve, I'll walk out of Parliament to take it. This is a very important project, and you must do it. So we started. There were a few minor obstacles of environmental people coming there, but it was declared, I think, a PPP, Presidential Preferential Project. So I could basically, I'm not saying I could, but I could basically go ahead with the project, and it's an urgent project, and I had the backing of the full Parliament. And the President gave me 1 year in which to do it. Now, it took me 10 months, but I really think, Theo, if I look back on the project, I really think it was higher people than the President that wanted this this project, because everything just fell in place. We built this pipeline in just over 10 months. Eskom came to the party and gave me sufficient power to drive the engines. Everything just happened. I don't know if it was the influence of the President or whether it just had to happen. And we completed the pipeline, 18 kilometers long. And I'm very proud today to say to you, we never realized the benefits the surrounding community would get from it. We take high quality water and give it to more than 400,000 people in our area. I only take it to a certain reservoir. Government takes it from there and does I think it's called reticulation. And also 200,000 head of goats and cattle, and in the region of 85,000 head of game. So this pipeline transformed my district. New farmers came to the fore. My farm is doing very well. The Zululand Rhino Reserve, as well as my own game reserve, Sambanyati, we're flourishing. It's going so well with our game section that we start talking about it as the next Mala Mala. People are just coming from everywhere. The reason, sufficient quality water to every person in that area.
And that, Marion, I want to get to you. Resources, climate change, the utilization and the excess of resource, that access of people to resources. In terms of your area, risks like climate change, quality water, how are you viewing it, and how do you manage the process?
I think, Theo, AFGRI, whilst they are an agricultural services company and not necessarily involved in primary farming, our focus has been on sustainable agriculture, and that's mitigating the impact of climate change on our business and our partners being our clients. I think we've seen how significant, and Hendrik has highlighted those significant impacts, and this has become an issue of national concern, and we've seen that coming through from the government implementing your carbon tax legislation and so forth. So much of the risk in food production and in food security is related to climate change, and particularly the resources that are under pressure that Hendrik has highlighted. So a lot of our focus within AFGRI has been to reduce reliance on these resources. And I mean, I think the more pressure that agriculture is seeing also is that they are fighting for resources or competing for resources with other non-agri sector businesses or industries. So that is why we have focused on really just reducing our carbon footprint, reducing our reliance on energy, reducing our reliance on water, making sure that we purify the water and come up with better uses of wastewater and so forth. But from an external point of view, I think having seen that the government is moving towards your new farmer-based industry in order to address food security needs and so forth, we have acknowledged our responsibility to assist the government. And in so doing, we've also focused on developing and teaching the farmer within our training and development program within harvest time how to engage in new farming methods in order to address sustainability within the agri-sector. And what we do is literally, we've got 2 training farms that we run. And on those 2 training farms, we literally have trials that we run with demonstrations for the farmer to see the different types of methods and the impact that has in the results. And in so doing, they're able to go back and implement the differences that we show them in terms of the different methods that we show them. And they see the results and they see how that translates into cost savings and so forth. So we believe that education and skills transfer is more important, because that risk concentration in terms of sustainable agriculture will move towards your new farmer base. So that's really what we're doing, Theo.
Mike, let me take the conversation to you. Energy, changes in energy scarcity, costs of energy, trends in terms of biofuels or renewables. If you look at the current energy situation in South Africa, specifically towards agriculture, what is the latest trends and where are we in that?
Thanks, Theo. I think if you look at energy internationally, it's driven by 3 things. It's the accessibility of energy, affordability, and the environmental impacts. And it's how do we manage these 3 items. And our drive is really to make sure that we have a network that delivers product to agri when they need it. It's a seasonal demand, so from a meeting the demand at the right time, that's critical. Obviously, affordability and the efficiencies that we can get product both manufactured and imported and into the country at the right place is key to ensuring the affordability side. And then on the environmental side, we obviously look at our own footprint and how we can improve on our own footprint. But I think it's probably a greater issue that we have control on, and that is the emissions, particularly from transport and fixed stationary vehicles. And very much the oil industry is following the OEMs internationally. There's huge pressure on OEMs to reduce their carbon, average carbon footprint from their vehicles. You'll see smaller engine sizes delivering more power, and that requires, say, a lot higher technology in those engines, and that has an impact on the fuels that are required to deliver that power. So we very much follow what's happening on the engine technology and make sure that our fuels and lubricants are meeting all of those new requirements. I think that's very much the trend going forward. I think just at a broader energy context, I'm part of the South African National Energy Association, and part of their brief is, or their ambit is to try and improve all energy spheres. So whether it's nuclear, whether it's coal, the country is short of energy, and we need to try and drive all of those energy streams. I know Shell, for instance, is looking at his cane toppings and so on, and gasifying those to create an energy source from a waste stream. There's from the renewable energy IPPs, first, second, third window, we're now really starting to see the impact of those big wind farms on the coast and in the Northern Cape and so on. The big solar panel farms are starting to come up. And I think the technology is really developing at an enormous rate. You no sooner think you've got the best technology, and then there's something else that comes out. I was reading some of the solar farms in Brazil. They actually have them as floating systems. So we could maybe cover Jusini Dam with water. There was discussions earlier around just how much water gets lost in the system, and that's energy, because you have to pump that water into the system. So if we can save, whether it's evaporation or leakage, that's saving energy at the end of the day.
Charles, we noted, Mike noted your project. In terms of energy, in terms of the pressure on energy, the reliance on energy, the cost of energy, from your point of view, how do you approach this?
Theo, we did a hell of a lot of work over the last few years on energy saving. Not only did I go over to Denmark about 2 years ago, and my sons came with, where we really studied efficient handling of water, pumping it with the most efficient motor and the most efficient pump. And also the drip technology that we're already using, but they are, like Mike was saying, there's continuous upgrading coming of the systems. And the VSD drives to drive motors on the farm. We went to, I'm not advertising, but I won't say the name, we went to a very well-known, largest pump manufacturer in the world in Denmark. And they gave us several demonstrations on a computer where they would use an old-fashioned motor coupled to an old-fashioned pump, say delivering 100 liters of water at 2 bar, and the computer tells you the amount of energy used. You see a flow meter, you see what the output of the pump is, and they say, right, let's take the modern one. And they take an ultra-high efficiency motor coupled to an ultra-high efficiency pump using a variable speed drive, same computer, and you save as much as 48% on electricity. And that is the way forward. There is no other way forward for pumping, handling water on your farm. We have to do that. And then to get to our power station, it was about 2 years ago, Sunday afternoon, we were burning cane. We burned about 30 to 35 hectares at a time. It was a very quiet day, and the flames went like 25 meters up. And I was standing next to my one son, Andre, and I said, Andre, if only we can contain that energy. I mean, look at what's going up in the sky. And Andre went back to the drawing board, spoke to several experts on energy, and we decided to talk to Building Energy, which is a company in Italy, specializing in energy from organic matter. And they came to us, and they were totally carried away by the fact that we throw away, we burn. Sugarcane is the only crop in the world that you grow for 1 year, and before you harvest it, you set it alight. So they were very, very excited, and immediately took samples of the extraneous matter, the tops and the leaves and stuff like that, put it in a bag, took it over to Italy and did combustion tests on it, and were very impressed. And we're in the process now of starting our power station here. It will develop between 16.5 and 20 megawatt, 360 days a year, 5 days we need for maintenance. You will love it because it is so environmentally friendly that it's unbelievable. The emissions from the chimney will be the same as 2 exhaust pipes of a vehicle idling.
And that is to produce all the power?
That is to produce a green power, yes. Eskom was also very happy because they have in mind to make at least 10% of their power supply solar or green in the very near future. So they joined in. NERSA, I think it took them like 3 months to give us the necessary permission and sign the contract with us. We're also happy with the tariffs. And We are ready to go. We are putting out tenders. In fact, the tender was won by, I think it was won by Group 5. They're going to build the power station for us in about 20 months. I still have to plant a bit of cane, excuse me,
You've got 20 months.
Yes, I got 20 months in which to do it. We're very motivated. We're importing a planter from Australia, sugarcane planter, which will help us. But we're ready to rumble. It's a very exciting project. I think it's a world first, and it's not going to be the world's last.
Thank you very much. So we'll talk about this after the break. We are going to take a short break now, and we'll be back with you just after our break.
Nation in Conversation, proudly brought to you by Senves, Grain SA, Avgri, John Deere, Engen, and Monsanto.
Welcome back to Nation in Conversation. My guest today is Charles Senekal, owner of Senekal Farms. Marion Sikwanya, she's the Managing Director of Harvest Time. Mike Stead, who is the Commercial Fuels Manager at Engen, and Dr. Hendrik Smith, Conservation Agriculture Facilitator at Grain SA. Mike, I want to start with you, the second part. Energy, storage of energy, that is a costly element in the chain. We've heard what Charles is doing in terms of producing energy, of using his current available resources to produce energy, but that's one portion of the whole chain. In terms of storage and distribution, what is the current trends when it comes to storage?
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the big challenges with energy sources such as solar is that you have 12 hours a day of energy, and then it disappears for another 12. And how do you actually maintain that over time? And I think more and more of these energy sources, whether it's wind or solar, are intermittent. And I think the challenge for South Africa going forward is to have a backbone of power that probably replaces coal, and in all likelihood it'll be gas that the main infrastructures run on, and then we manage with these renewables. But within the renewable space, there's a number of options. In some of the big solar systems, they use heated salt solutions that will drive boilers, through the night, and then they heat up the medium again over the daytime. We have a number of hydro systems, the Ngula system, that's just been put together, and Sterkfontein and that system as well. So there's a number of systems that will drive electricity and storage that way. From the engine side, obviously, the best solution to storing energy is in liquid fuels, and diesel is a prime example of how to have energy available when you want it on tap. We can pump it up from the coast inland and so on. So, yeah.
Miriam, we've noted coal, and that is a specific mining activity that is encroaching on your area. And we're talking about the available quality land, and we're talking about mining activity. And it seems almost as if mining has the carte blanche. Number one, in terms of getting it started, but in terms of not really doing what they should in terms of rehabilitating, in terms of the prescribed law, not really doing it. Your comments?
Theo, I think with the coal mining that's happening in Mpumalanga, and Mpumalanga being the major maize and soybean producer in South Africa, it's a really big crisis. And I think that we really need government to be coming up with more aggressive solutions in terms of implementing or even making sure that the laws that are there protect more of your arable land, and making sure that arable land is used for its purpose as opposed to other purposes. So we need a little bit more aggressive solutions or action from government in terms of putting in place punitive measures as well for those that pollute or...
You believe the laws are in place? It's a question of implementing.
I believe so, and I'm not really sure why there hasn't been such action in making sure that people are brought to the core in terms of making sure that those activities do not continue. But I think that in addition to government playing a role, the private sector, I mean, we all see that noises have been made and there isn't much happening. So I think the private sector also needs to come together and engage each other on more technology, new innovative ways of making sure that we reap more yields perhaps from the limited land that we've got, as opposed to trying to fight a battle that isn't going to be won. So I think some of those solutions
So the element
come
is
from
also
there.
productivity.
Yes.
Hendrik, I want to move towards solutions. You gave us the position where we are, the risks where we are, some of these factors moving in the absolute wrong direction. From a solutions point of view, where is our solutions?
Yeah, I think fortunately there are solutions to turn this vicious cycle of degradation around into a virtuous cycle. And conservation agriculture is the system that actually have answers to all these problems, and it comprises many of the aspects that we have spoken about. I quickly want to go through the principles of conservation agriculture. First of all, the first principle or practice is minimal soil disturbance, because the moment you start to disturb your soil, you start this downward spiral of soil and land degradation. So we plant without plowing. We use specialized planters in grain crops now specifically, but it could be anything else as well. We use specialized planters to plant directly into the soil without disturbance into a mulch cover. So the second practice is to protect your soil with your crop residues or living cover crops or whatever you have, and feed, so that will protect and feed your soil. And the third principal practice is diversity. So we want to have as much crops and plants in your land, in your field, on your farm as possible, because this diversity fuels sustainability. It feeds the soil. The more diversity and the more quantity you feed to the soil, the quicker your soil recovers. It gets productive, and it's a self-generating system that will look after you. So if you look closely to those three principles, you see that we are trying to move closer to nature, because we have tried, we have done and created a reality outside nature. There is no such thing. And the closer, the sooner we get back to nature with our farming practices, the sooner we will be sustainable, and nature will look after us.
I want to take that point. Farming is a marginal business that's becoming a scale business. So obviously the margin is incredibly important, and you can only be sustainable if you increase your volume, if you increase the size. It becomes a bigger scale business. When you talk about changing the way you are farming, will that add, or is there a cost involved in moving towards a more nature-based farming entity?
There's some costs, but there's also a huge reduction in cost as well. So in terms of economical finances for the farmer, it's really adding positively to the profitability of the farmers. I can just mention a few. It reduces the fuel consumption about 60%. It reduces the maintenance cost of your implements and tractors about 60, maintenance, overhead costs, labor costs, tractor hours, all about a 60% reduction. The capital cost to buy maybe a new planter, that's maybe something that we need to consider. But we have seen that even for fairly small farmers, it is beneficial to go that route, because your system is so profitable that you will be able to pay off your fairly expensive planter fairly quickly. So it is really worth investing. That's the only way to go. So we'll have to just do it, decide to do it, and go for it.
Charles, I want to bring the conversation back to you. If we look at the communities we farm in, obviously one needs to, and then Miriam also touched on that, farming will only be sustainable if it benefits the whole community, if there's more people beneficial, and also using sound principles that will work for them in the long term. In terms of the communities around you, what is your relationship with the communities? How do you interact with them? And is there benefit for being next to Charles Senekal as a community?
Theo, thank you. I think my relationship with the communities are excellent. It's my duty to know when it's the chief's birthday. When someone dies, I'll go to the funeral. The whole family, you've been to my farm, are community-orientated people. Farming on the size that we farm, we really feel that we must share some of our expertise with our neighbors. I currently have a scheme on the farm called Inhlanhla for 50 of my farm workers with 10 years and longer service, 300 hectares of sugarcane under irrigation. They farm it. Saturdays, they don't work, they go there. They do everything. It's an unbelievably prosperous business. They make a lot of money, and they still work for me. So I was contacted by the surrounding communities only about a month and a half ago, saying, hey, why can't you do the same scheme for us on our land? They're adjacent to me. My whole farming operation is in like a tribal area. And I agreed to it, but I said to them, they certainly, to plant 2,000 or 3,000 hectares of sugarcane is an expensive exercise. But I then started looking for sponsors. And there is so much goodwill, gentlemen and ladies, amongst the community of South Africa. I'm talking of commercial farmers, talking of banks, I'm talking of co-ops, I'm talking of general public, that they referred me to an institution that said, listen, if you do it, we'll probably sponsor 70% of your project. And
it's a sizable amounts we're talking about.
We're talking about 60,000 rand a hectare to establish, and then it excludes the price of the land. So to do 3,000 hectares, 180 million rand. And the people said, listen, we're quite sure of 70%. They haven't confirmed it yet, but I'm just saying it to demonstrate to the people the goodwill amongst South Africans, to get those people into farming, to get them to live better than the way they're living now. And we're highly excited about the project. I went to see the milling companies, they're all in. And in fact, we're putting up a billeting plant on the farm to go from road transport to rail transport. Railways bought into our project. Even there, people came in with sponsorships, sponsoring us to transport, to take 1 million tons of sugarcane that would normally go to the sugar mill on the road onto rail. And we have government buy-in, roads department buying in. I really think that we must ride this wave of goodwill that the people have to improve the lives of other people. And it's just going from good to better.
Miriam, in terms of development, farming developmental, you touched on it. How can we accelerate that process?
I think the importance is that all the stakeholders come together. If we all come together to ensure that, it's very clear that the move is towards the new farmer, but the commercial farmer, the current commercial farmer, it's very important that they also realize their role to play in this journey. And Charles has already touched on how he has been involved. So those are the kind of relationships and partnerships we need. All the stakeholders need to partner to come together in order to make sure that the new farmer is developed into a commercial farmer. So those are the kind of things that we need to come to. And then I think, if we do that, the social impact thereof will be amazing. Right now, we're touching a lot on the environmental issues, but we don't realize that those environmental issues are very much interlinked to your social issues and your economic issues, the whole triple bottom line effect. And if we don't address the environmental and the economic, then the social becomes a major issue. We've seen now what a shortage of resources can do to a country. And we've seen the xenophobic attacks. We've seen how the riots come up. And if people are feeling more and more under pressure in terms of accessing resources, then those kind of things will come in. So if we start looking into the triple bottom line, then we will start addressing all spheres of sustainability. I think that's the way to go.
Charles talked about the goodwill of farmers to address their communities. Would you share that experience? Do you get, in your area, in your farming community, do you see that same principle?
Very much so. I think the reason why people actually want to go into farming, and particularly small-scale farming, is to feed the communities around them. That's the need that they've identified. And a lot of our farmers, that is what they're doing. They come to learn about the farming, and they go back to their communities, and they feed the communities around them. And that is the only way we can infiltrate, actually, small-scale farming that we can duplicate throughout all the communities. And that's what our farmers want to do.
Mike, energy is a big cost anywhere in a business entity, and specifically so in the farming enterprise, either being diesel or electricity, and the volatility and fluctuations in those prices. How do you see the future of specifically energy in South Africa, but more specific towards the farming community?
So I think, as we've seen over the last 10 years, I think diesel has moved from 2 rand a litre to wherever it is today. And we're going to see more of that. It's more than 2 rand, yes. And I think all energy forms, there's just going to be more and more pressure on us as time goes on to manage. So I think solutions in the farming front, as Hendrik has said, change the way you operate. And if there's a fundamental shift there, then there's, I guess, some benefits in terms of the energy intensity in the farming operations. Modes of transport is obviously another key area. But I think there's opportunities. It's energy sources, whether it's hydroelectric that people can use using waste material, biogas generation. I think there's a number of options open to farming.
Hendrik, if you look at the conservation principles that you talked about farming, and if you look at where we are now, what is the major hurdles for farmers to embrace what you're talking about? Because what you're talking about needs to be both to the benefit of the individual farmer, otherwise it's not going to happen, and to the community. If you could accelerate the process, how would you accelerate the process?
Yeah, I think the big hurdles are awareness of the benefits of conservation agriculture, knowledge about it, experience in conservation agriculture, that courage to take the first step, and maybe also a bit of capital to buy the necessary equipment. What we do is to recognize farmers as the main innovators, because since the start of conservation agriculture, and that you can trace back to the 1930s, the Dust Bowl era of the United States, where farmers were the drivers of sustainable agriculture. And that has been the case up till now in South Africa, as we've just heard. Farmers are the drivers. So the principle in spreading sustainable agriculture in South Africa and right across the world is to recognize, to use, and to award farmers as the key innovators in sustainable agriculture. And that's a way that we do that. We build innovation networks and platforms around these innovative farmers, especially conservation agriculture farmers. And we scale out from there, as Miriam also said. We scale out from these centers, experiences, examples of excellence, using farmers, and support them with technical expertise, input, manufacturers, etc. And we reach out to the rest of the community. We don't have time. We have about 5 or 10 years' time to change the situation around. So speed and quality and impact is of great importance. I think we underestimate the situation that we are in terms of natural resource degradation. United Nations said we have about 60 years of soil left. We need to feed about we need to feed a lot more people. We're losing 12 million hectares of soil every year. So, and that's just, we need about 6 million hectares of land. We're losing 12. Where are we ending? So we don't have time. We need to change around. We need to use farmers. We need to use the right approach to make an impact using conservation agriculture.
Can I for a minute move towards Africa, the rest of Africa? If you look at more than half of the unused arable land is in the rest of Africa, on the planet. Secondly, if you look at the population growth in the next 3 to 4 decades, almost half of the population growth will probably be in Africa. If you then take that and you look at the international trend of urbanization, where more than 70% of the people stay in urban areas, food production and food security will be a theme that will be with us for a long time. Given what you have said, where is South Africa positioned relative to Africa, and where is the opportunities in that respect?
In order to transfer our capacity towards Africa, I think we need to work on ourselves first. I think we have a lot of work in South Africa to promote conservation agriculture. I think we have great examples, and there's already farmers taking this message into Africa. I think we can share our experiences, our technology, our success stories with the rest of South Africa, with the rest of Africa. But so also we can learn from the rest of South Africa, especially in terms of empowering small-scale farmers, because there's the same principle. Using farmers in the innovation process has been done very successfully in other parts of Africa. It's like massification of the message in Africa using approaches like the Farmer Field School. So there's great lessons in Africa that we can also learn, and partnerships that we can form in Africa, and to make the whole success story of African reality.
In terms of, and the next question I'll come back to Charles. Are you optimistic that South Africa is on the right track in terms of the risks of degrading the soil? I'm optimistic that there are solutions. I'm a bit skeptical about the speed that we are moving at the moment. So we need more resources to accelerate the pace of transformation of South African farming. There's great pockets of excellence in provinces, in farmers, but there's also great areas of a lack of transformation in terms of sustainable agriculture. We need to focus on those areas. We need to transform them as soon as possible. Charles, I want to link this to you. We've talked about sustainable agriculture. We've talked about how the environment needs to be managed. But there's also additional risks. There's the political side of the risk. There's the risks in terms of people without land. There's a risk in terms of people farming it the wrong way. There's a risk of our natural resources being shared amongst different industries in terms of water. There's pollution. There's all of those risks. If you look at the farming situation in South Africa currently, how do you feel about the future?
I'm very optimistic about the future. I told you about the goodwill amongst the farmers, and especially the large commercial farmers. We must come up with proposals, and we must say, guys, this is what we want to do. Government must say to us, this is what we demand. We must look at the Constitution and see how close can we get to what government wants us to achieve. The farmers are all very, very, the large ones that I represent, are all very, very anxious to help with the upgrading of farming in their specific areas. The Agricultural College of Sadara visits my farm twice a year, and they were there just the other day. And they had about 90 students there that will all get their university degrees, I don't know, I think by the end of this year, just before the end of the year. And they have nowhere to go. My proposal was, why don't all the large farmers employ 2 or 3 of them to come and work on their farms? Because they are very well educated, but they lack practical experience. And those people must come into our system. They must be the catalyst, for other areas to grow. If they work for me on the farm for 3 years and they go, they'll leave a vacuum, but I'll take another 3. And we must polish these guys to be highly polished agricultural farmers or extension officers to go into South Africa. We need 450 at least per year of trained people to enter our system. Agricultural economists. 15 years ago, there were like 80 to 100 of them getting their degrees. Today, they're 4, 5, and 6. People are just not going into agriculture any longer because it's not attractive to them. But we must stimulate educated people to enter the market, and they will make a difference. Most of the problems in agriculture can be addressed through good, solid education.
Miriam, how do we make agriculture sexy for the new farmers?
I think it's important that we put people out there that in agriculture, we allow them to speak to the masses and showcase what they have done in agriculture while looking sexy. And also I think we must like Charles said, we need to target the youth. Once the youth has been transformed, then it will automatically look vibrant to go into the agricultural sector. And then just one last thing, Theo, on Africa. I think it's time that South Africa takes up its leadership role. I think we shouldn't be afraid. There is still a lot of work to be done within South Africa, but I think that as the leaders within Africa, it's time that we go into Africa and offer whatever that we've got now, at least while we're still developing other things. So that's very important.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Thank you very much. That is the end of the second part. Remember, if you want to keep on following these conversations, please visit our website, nationinconversation.co.za, or on Twitter, Nation Converse.
Nation in Conversation, proudly brought to you by Senves, Grain SA, Avgri, John Deere, Engen, and Monsanto.